Hey everybody, Glitch here, and today I have a bit of a different video for you. Patch 11.2 Ghost of Koresh is set to arrive for the War Within here in just about a week, on August 5th, I believe. And I thought I'd take some time to poke around in the PTR and take a look at any odds and ends that caught my attention. I've got a list of a few things to show you. They range from exploration to delves, a couple things about crafting, a couple things about the raid, and a couple other general things of interest. Do note, this isn't really an in-depth look into, for example, keystones or like raid bosses or just the raid itself. These are just some curiosities that I found interesting and thought, well, maybe other people might also find interesting, and I haven't seen too many people talking about them, so I wanted to. Now, a very quick disclaimer, there will be some lore spoilers that I want to bring up. I played through the story in Ghost of Koresh in the PTR, and I think they're just cool enough to talk about, and so I will be talking about them. But don't worry, if you don't want to be spoiled, I will mark that section appropriately for you to skip. I'm also going to take the time to split this video into different chapters, so if you don't care about, for example, delves, you can just go ahead and skip that chapter. It'll be no skin off my nose. So, that being said, let's get into it, and let's start with... Yeah, okay, so I'm touching on the story quests very quickly, but I promise you, not in a spoiler way. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up first is because if you're like me, whenever there's a new WoW patch with a lot of intro quests and borrowed power you have to go get and things to unlock, one of the very first questions on my mind is there a skip for alts? Well, this time I'm happy to report that there is, at least mostly that I could see. So once you've done the main story quests on your main, all you seemingly have to do on your alts is log in and you'll receive the quest A Shadowy Invitation. You go turn that in at Locust Walker in Dornogal, pick up the next quest, let him walk you through the portal to, minor spoiler, although it's been announced quite a bit, to Tazavish, skip that cutscene that pops up, turn in the Return to the Veiled Markets quest, and then Omen, the NPC right in front of you, will have a new dialogue option to skip ahead. And then after that, boom, you should have most of the zone mostly unlocked. Do note, one question that I was unable to answer on the PTR is how you receive your Reshii Wraps once you skip. I'm not sure if you get it in the mail or if you just go talk to a certain person that I cannot mention due to spoilers that is related to those quests, right? On the PTR, I ended up getting the cloak from, there's a torrent that gives you gear just to test stuff, so I'm not quite sure where it comes from once you hit live and skip on alt. But if I had to guess, it either comes from that story person that I will not mention the name of, or there are two other reels at Overlook Zoshul that give you upgrades for your Reshii Wraps, and they might have it. If I end up finding out, I'll update below, likely via a comment, just in case anybody's wondering. In case you're wondering, the main story quests did take me about 2 to 3 hours to go through in the PTR, but don't panic. That was with a lot of wandering around, exploring. There's a lot of stay in a while and listen conversations that I enjoy, so I did listen to them, that type of thing. So if you're just blasting through it, I can't imagine it taking as long before you're able to get your borrowed power in the form of your cloak, which is near the end of the story. Speaking of the legendary cloak, the Reshii Wrap, there's a couple of things that I feel are worth mentioning. There is power tied to upgrading your Reshii Wrap cloak via the two other reels in Outlook Zoshul, but there's also a lot of convenience and interactions with the world that comes from upgrading it. As an example, the upgrade tree for the cloak eventually lets you ride around on a mount while phase diving, but you can't do otherwise, nor can you fly while phase diving. I'll talk a little bit more in detail about some phase diving topics soon, but I wanted to bring up one more thing with the cloak first. So, the cloak has one fiber slot in it, which is kind of a gem slot, that lets you decide what secondary stat you want on your cloak. So these can be made by a tailor in epic quality, but assuming this sticks around for live, one of the two other real vendors, Hashim, has a basic blue quality fiber for sale, If they remain the same as PTR, these will be very cheap and will be an easy way to put some secondaries on your cloak very early without having to buy the big upgrade just yet. On a max upgrade cloak, it seems to be just about 70% or so of the stats that the epic quality fiber would give you, although I am unsure if this fluctuates with eye level. I don't think the epic quality one for players will be prohibitively expensive, but you never know. Speaking of powers the cloak gives you, one of those abilities is the ability to even enter the raid. Yes, this may be a situation like Nyalotha back in BFA, where you need the cloak to even interact with the content. I won't be touching on what else the cloak does in the raid, as I do not yet know myself, such as, interactions with boss abilities or that type of thing, but I did want to bring up a few raid-related subjects. For starters, there's another Renown track in the raid called the Manaforge Vandals, just like Undermine, and also like Undermine, it has slowly increasing throughput buffs for your raid, essentially soft nerfing the raid as the weeks go by. Also like Undermine, there's a lot of interesting stuff that isn't player power weaved into the Renown track. For example, in Undermine we got counterfeit chips that allowed you to get appearances from the raid via a boss drop in the raid itself. We have those here too, in the form of Ethereal Essence Slivers. They drop from Nexus King Salhador, and these start at Renown 12. Another interesting Renown reward is that at Renown 9, the Soul Hunter's optional boss will begin dropping Soul Gorged Augment runes. These are runes that, according to the tooltip, do not expire on death. While that does sound interesting, initially I question how useful these will be, because one of the things coming with the new Renown in this patch is the Infinite rune. Although it is a little bit later down the line, it's still something of note. As a final raid-related note, the usual quest to defeat the final boss for a ruined crest is present, and it appears there will be another story version of the boss to defeat too, so you can get it with ease. I strongly recommend you try and have this quest in your log before you venture into the raid on the first week. Yet another aspect of the patch enabled by the cloak is phase diving. In case you don't know, phase diving is something new you can do in Koresh, where you kind of phase out into a different, phase of the area. There's different things to kill, treasures to find, mog to collect, that type of thing. Well, if you're not aware, initially phase diving behaves a little like the Maw. I know, hold the booze, I know. You're unable to mount and are just on foot and you cannot fly. However, in a strange turn of events, phase diving itself has incredible mobility as part of it, just a little bit down the line. I don't know if all of these are strictly through upgrades, but some of the things you can do in phase diving are incredible. For example, the phase conduits themselves, these are the conduits that allow you to enter the phase diving. While you're in the phased state, they are pseudo flight paths. Actually, they're even better than pseudo flight paths because you can just teleport to other phase conduits anywhere, including the one in Tazavish. This makes travel around the zone a breeze. I'm unsure if this is strictly through an upgrade like I mentioned, as I had my cloak and my tree from the cloak upgrades fully upgraded, but it is worth mentioning. Yet another item that makes phase diving travel insanely convenient is a potion that you can pick up called the Untethered Zaibucha. This is a potion that you can pick up out in the world while phase diving. Maybe it's around outside of the phases as well, I'm unsure. And what it does is it gives you a staggering 270% speed buff and a jump height increase. It also gives you some healing, but that's a little bit minor. The real star here is the speed. You can zoom with this potion in phase diving. I'm unsure if this one is also attained specifically through upgrades, because while you can see these on the floor at random spots out in the world, I know for a fact that I got one from the phase lost chests, and those are definitely an upgrade, so I'm unsure if they don't appear until then. However, the combination of the Zaibucha and the teleport means that you are able to relocate extremely fast around this zone, or at least eventually you will be able to. And why would you want to move around phase diving? Well, aside from your standard fare of rares to kill and quests to complete, I've also found that there's a ton of Mog just waiting to be found. Between all the Mog just sitting around waiting to be picked up, and the Mog that comes from some energy orbs that you pick up, which I believe are also an upgrade, you'll have plenty of reasons to zoom around drinking your Zaibucha. One thing I am not 100% clear on is how to drop the phase dive state anywhere. There's an item on the PTR that allows you to do so, and it's very cheap from the vendor, like it's 1 copper. But the fact that it's so cheap makes me unsure if it'll carry over to live. But if so, you'll be able to reach most areas of Koresh extremely quickly with that combination of speed from the teleports and the potion. Speaking of things that kick you out of phase dive, watch out for the world boss. He just sits in a corner throwing lightning around, and his lightning seems to boot you out of your phase state. Though I do believe that's by design, as he can't be damaged from phase dive, at least most of the time. Sometime during the fight he actually does phase into the phase state himself. I'm not sure if that's meant to be a mechanic where you need people in the phase dive. I doubt it. But either way, just in case, be careful when you're near him, unless you're planning to kill him, in which case, sure, use the lightning to your advantage, right? Oh, by the way, speaking of dangers in the zone, don't go near Mana Forge Omega without the cloak. Seriously, you will not live to regret it. So, obviously, the Reshii Wraps are a big part of the patch. So much so that, unfortunately, if you're a tailor like I am, then you're a little bit out of luck. Cloak crafts are going to be very dead for this patch, which they definitely were one of the more popular crafting requests, since everybody could use them. But, not to worry though, tailors, because you get to craft the epic quality fiber sockets that everyone will want to socket into their Reshii Wraps. So you get that as a bit of a consolation prize. It's unclear how profitable they will be. They aren't that hard to craft, they're not affected by multi-craft, and you can actually remove the fiber socket from your cloak without breaking it. So realistically, everybody will only need to buy 1 or 2 for whatever stats they might want, and that's if they want to switch stats. Speaking of professions, there's a couple of things that caught my eye coming in the patch. For starters, there's a new ore and a new herb to pick, but strangely enough, they do nothing. That's right, you pick them up, they have entries in the profession journal, which also means they're affected by your tool stats and the skill trees, but they are actually used to craft anything at all. Instead, what you do is you bring the ore and herbs to specific vendors and trade them in for actual herbs and ore that you use in Algari crafts. These 2 vendors, their names are Omit and Omuse, at least I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, can be found in Tazavesh, at the bottom of the stairs that would lead you up to the last boss in Streets of Wonder. Of note, the herbalism entry for the Koresh herb mentions that the vendor's inventory prices change each day, so you may be able to get cheaper herbs of certain types on certain days. The ore entry in the mining profession, however, does not mention this changing of prices, but if you look at the vendor, his prices seem to mimic the herb vendor, so this may be the case for him as well. If not, well, Bismuth might actually be about to tank in price due to the influx of people trading phantom ore to this guy to do so. Strangely enough, there doesn't appear to be a vendor for skinners, nor do there appear to be new skins. There's plenty of things to skin in Koresh, so I'm unsure why this was not added. In addition, although I didn't try thoroughly, I was not able to find a spot to use any bait in Koresh, and that's very disappointing, because quite frankly, baiting some sort of elusive void beast seems like such a cool thing to do. Maybe it exists and I just didn't find it, but if it doesn't, I'm going to be very disappointed. There's a couple more final observations regarding professions that I wanted to point out. Alchemists get a couple of things. They get a new healing potion, which is nice, but the real prize, at least presumably, is the new Shadow Meld potion. This potion essentially lets anyone and everyone cosplay as a Night Elf, at least every 5 minutes or so. In theory, this enables Shadow Meld skips for every group in M+, but in practicality, we'll see if this is even a thing everybody does in general. They're not exactly free, so I think it depends on where the cost ends up. I'll be honest, I kind of feel bad for pugs though. A lot of Shadow Meld skips are probably going to become an expectation in key pugs, particularly after the MDI or the Great Push, events like that, and that kind of stinks. The last 2 things for professions that I wanted to point out are, in my opinion, the most interesting. Enchanters get a new Gleeful Glamour, and if you don't know what that is, it's a consumable item that lets you transform into a different race for a while. I believe they were added in this expansion, and there's a couple, for a lot of races, Pandora and the like. Well, this time, the new one lets you transform into an Ethereal. That is so thematic and cool, and I expect these to be very popular. I'll circle back to the materials needed that should be on screen right now, but first let me talk about scribes. Aside from the standard stuff like the Vantis rune, they get a normal contract for the new Renown, as they always do, and, strangely enough, 3 more contracts. Each of these are associated with one of the broker cartels, and it looks like they share the contract limitation of 1 for your entire warband. You get these recipes at, I believe, Renown 8 in the raid. But what do they do? I'll be honest, I don't know. These are so interesting to me because they take what appear to be a very limited resource. Again, I'll double back on that here in a moment. But I have no idea why you'd want to gain renown for a specific cartel instead of just a generic contract. Maybe there are factions like the Undermine cartels? It's unclear to me, and looking at Wowhead, they've data mined some other items like ciphers and dead drops that seem to be associated with these contracts, but it's tough to piece together from data mining. I would keep an eye on this one. There may be some more reps and mounts or maybe some secrety stuff associated with this that have flown a little under the radar. Now, part of the reason that I think these contracts may be something special is that, as mentioned before, they use what may realistically be a fairly limited resource, which are mana forged instruments. These are a new bind and equip crafting item that will start dropping from Forge Weaver Araz in the raid starting at Renown 8. They are BOE, so they can be sold on the auction house. However, who knows how many will drop every time you kill the boss, and since they're associated with consumables, it's entirely possible that these items will be pretty pricey, particularly if the ethereal Gleeful Glamour is popular. This is why I think there may be a little more to those cartel contracts, because there's no real reason why they would tie a consumable like that to something without it being something special. At least I would hope so. Alright, let's talk delves real quick. And if you're not a delve enjoyer, don't worry, this section is short. Aside from the obvious new nemesis and the new delve itself, there's a couple neat things to point out coming in the new patch that I think add a lot of convenience. Before I get to those real quick, I wanted to point out how cool the new nemesis mount is. I mean, look at it. So good. I've liked them all thus far, but this one really takes the cake. Anyways, back to the topic. They added an area in Tazavish with portals to all the bountiful delves, as well as seemingly a portal to the Delve HQ, which is nice. They've also added a couple of toys related to delves. For example, there's a toy that seems to behave like the Loot Radar Curio that Bran has. It costs undercoin, however, and it seems to be a consumable, so unless Bran no longer has that curio, I question how useful that item is. Something that very likely is useful, though, is a toy that makes a portal on a 2-hour cooldown that teleports you and any nearby ally back to the Delve HQ in Dornogal. This is just another nice quality of life teleport to get you to and from delves, and is appreciated, and it just speeds things up. That's always good. As usual, the item to spawn the nemesis in the delve is also present for undercoin. Oh, and speaking of the nemesis, which is Kaiveza, her delve entrance is right in Tazavish, so even more convenience there too. Just a quick note on the bank changes. Blizzard is going to do away with void storage, so if you have anything important in there, probably go grab it now while you can. In addition, you should probably go right now and purchase all the bank tabs on your main and alts you play, or if you use them as warehouses like I do. Because after the patch, the cost of bank tabs is going to be a lot higher for some reason. Like, the last couple of tabs alone are several thousand gold compared to right now, where I think it's at most a couple hundred. So save yourself some gold right now. The cool thing is, the new tabs seem pretty customizable, which is neat. Although if you're like me, they're going to get flooded with random stuff either way. Oh well. At last, we reach the final section, which is the lore. Just as a quick heads up, I will be talking about some of the bigger surprises lore-wise that we've seen in a little while, so if you don't want to get spoiled, definitely skip this section. I'll give you a few moments. Okay, if you're still here, it means you want to hear about it, no takebacks. Alright, so let's start with the obvious one. If you're paying attention really early in the story, you'll find out that the brokers are actually Koreshi people. So they're also ethereals. Locust Walker infers that they needed stronger containment suits to exist in the Shadowlands, and that's why they're bulkier than their space mummy brothers. It's not anything entirely new. Everyone made that comparison with the brokers initially anyways, but it's cool to see it outright confirmed. Yet another big surprise, and I put the word surprise in heavy quotations here, is the sudden appearance of Xal'atath as an ally? Alright, this one's not really a surprise if you pay attention to Blizzard's social media, because they put a little preview of a video that happens during the patch, and many of us figured eventually something like this would happen where we'd have to team up with her anyways. So it's not terribly shocking. However, what I do find interesting, and why I bring it up, is the fact that Locust Walker has known Xal'atath for thousands of years. I know he's meant to be this mysterious master of the void, but come on man, a heads up would have been nice. Also, one of your best pals is Illyria, who you know is a big enemy of Xal'atath. You couldn't have, I don't know, mentioned something? That's crazy. You didn't mention anything back on Argus? I don't know about this Locust Walker fella anymore. Okay, but enough beating around the bush. By far, the biggest, at least in my opinion, and also in my opinion, most interesting lore reveal is that Xal'atath is directly responsible for the Koreshi's people transformation. In case that didn't make sense to you, Xal'atath is directly responsible for the space mummies looking like space mummies. That's crazy. So during the main quest, it's revealed that Locust Walker, back when Dimensius was about to devour Koresh, somehow cooperated with Xal'atath to use the Reshii ribbons, the things that more or less make up your cloak, to turn all the Koreshi people into energy. The implication being that they would have all expired had she not done it. But why? Why would she help them? Why would she essentially work against Dimensius? Why is she doing it again? I'm honestly not quite sure, but it is fun to theorize. I'm sure by the end of this, we will either have beat Dimensius and she will take that moment to strike, or maybe turning us all into energy is her plan and it makes us lose and she somehow wins. Who knows? It is interesting. I do personally believe we're going to go into the Midnight expansion having lost this fight. But really, the options are endless here, and so I'm very interested to see where it goes. Alright, and there it is. Those are the 11.2 oddities and curiosities that I noticed in the PTR and felt like talking about. If you've stuck around this far, thank you. I appreciate it greatly. That is the majority of stuff I wanted to cover. There's a couple of things here and there that I dropped just because I felt like it, or they didn't really seem all that interesting. Hopefully, I either taught you something or pointed out something cool that you might take an interest in. The whole point of this video was just things that caught my interest and things to keep in mind for when the patch launches. So, with that in mind, if there are some last-minute PTR changes that invalidate some of this, then my apologies in advance, and I'll try and put a comment if I find out about it with information. So if something is not matching up, look in the comments below, or leave a comment yourself to let me know, and I'll look into it. This type of video is something entirely new to me, so thank you for bearing with me until now. If you enjoyed it, please let me know. And if you would like some more stuff along this vein, or if you have some suggestions or comments, let me know too. I'm looking to improve and would welcome the criticism. So, once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in Koresh. Peace.